Joel Dembe is a four-time Canadian national wheelchair tennis champion and Paralympian. He has been working to empower communities through increased accessibility. Joel, how big a role has sports played in your life?
Well, sport was everything growing up. When I was in hospitals, when I was feeling lonely, I always had this outlet, and it was sport, and it was moving my body, and it was tapping into new skills. And so everything that I have today, everything that I've accomplished, I owe to sport.
You touched on how lonely and isolated you felt as a child with a disability. Fast forward to today, and you seem very confident and you're giving TED Talks. So, what advice would you give to young people watching that might be feeling the same way?
Well, sport really does teach you about failure. And when I was playing wheelchair tennis, that was my sport that I played for many years for Canada. Sport teaches you how to fail also in front of people. And you have to find a way to find the confidence to defeat your opponents, to overcome injuries, and to interact with people all around the world. And going from literally not having many friends to then interacting with the entire wheelchair sport community, you do build relationship skills, you do build emotional intelligence, and all of those things help build confidence.
Is there something that someone mentoring someone with a disability needs to consider?
I think empathy is first. I mean, I would say that we also tend to treat people with disabilities differently. Don't. It doesn't mean you can't ask or try to understand the disability, but to ignore that person with the disability, to ignore their lived experience would be a misnomer. It wouldn't do that person a service. I think it's really important to encourage, to motivate, and to challenge. I think in many ways, I'm pretty hardcore about, really challenging younger athletes to learn about their bodies, learn about their limitations, and hopefully surpass them. So I that always worked for me when someone issued a challenge to me. Admittedly, it still works.
Joel, you've coached many athletes over the course of your career. What are some of the similarities between coaching and the mentor and mentee relationship?
Well, I can go back to my own experiences as a young child, hanging out with older athletes with disabilities. And that meant everything to me to sort of see what is it like to be an adult in a wheelchair? Because at that age, at 12 years old, I was quite scared about being not just an athlete, in a wheelchair, but being someone who was just an adult, a normal person. And I'll tell you that being a mentor to someone who is a younger person with a disability, the roles are flipped now, and I try to teach them how to be independent, how to do things for themselves, whether it's carrying their tennis bag onto the court themselves, not asking for mom and dad's help, pushing their own chair, learning all of those things that, quite honestly, you'll need to face when you're traveling or when you're an older adult. And all of those things I remember quite vividly being taught to me when I was a younger athlete by some of the older athletes. And in some ways, you learn by seeing. And I think that's super important.
How can companies better help support this community and people with disabilities?
Well, I think the first thing companies need to do is look at disability as not just something that needs to be hired for, but clients, customers. If, again, 1 in 5 Canadians have a disability, a lot of your customer base is going to have a disability. And so, how do we tackle understanding disability? Well, your workforce should inherently look like the people you serve. And that goes with hiring more people with disabilities. It means investing in accessible technologies. It means branding and marketing and including people with disabilities as part of your broader diversity and inclusion methods.
Are there enough people with disabilities represented within the tech community? As you touched on, that there needs to be more technology helping serve this community.
I would say there is a natural inclination among many people with disabilities. And maybe you've heard of Microsoft. They have an autism hiring program for certain roles. But the interesting thing about technology is that actually technology hasn't quite caught up yet to being accessible, but not everything is closed captioned. not everything is translated and captioned at the same time. So we're literally on the precipice of really trying to figure out, okay, how can we make things more accessible so that the people with disabilities who actually want to work in Silicon Valley can actually not only get in the front door, but use the software and tools to make sure that they can have great careers.